Hello and welcome back to Schlyde into Sports, live on 103.1 FM on WVLP Radio. I'm your host, Ryan Schlyde, aka Schlyde, and here we talk about the college sports rules and regulations trickle-down effect, as well as other relevant sports outcomes, which over this summer we've been primarily focusing on the relevant sports outcomes like World Cup, NBA playoffs, and so on. But World Cup just ended. We've got to talk about the semifinals, finals, and third place games that took place this past week. We also have to talk about a historic breakthrough for Indiana football recruiting. We're going to preview a little bit into college football for next season at the same time while we're talking about Indiana's football recruiting history. There's also a proposed change in the Protect College Sports Act that was proposed that has Big Ten and SEC commissioners concerned, as they were thinking about forming a super conference at one point, or that proposal was brought up, and now there's some new rule changes to the act that are quite interesting, to say the least. And then to cap it off, we're also going to talk a little bit about just the upcoming season's rankings for college football and some delusional, as what a lot of fans are saying, delusional statements from Pat Narduzzi, the head coach at Pitt football, that have a lot of people going crazy online. So, all right, let's start off with the World Cup, though, since that just ended, and it was a pretty interesting ending, to say the least. You don't really see red cards happen in the final game all that often, but just a kind of precursor that Spain, they had an absolutely dominating performance over France right after the broadcast was over last week. Spain won 2-0. France's defense just collapsed. Spain's looked invincible, and they were just able to go on an absolute run. England was up 1-0 on Argentina for a little while, and then towards the end of the game, in the final minutes, Argentina was able to score. Fernandez scored in the 85th minute, and Martinez scored in the 92nd minute. After Anthony Gordon scored in the 55th minute for England, England kind of took a more defensive stance, and my only justification that I could come up with for England taking this stance was because they saw Argentina come back against the other teams that they played against in the knockout rounds, against Egypt, Cape Verde, and they were like, you know what, we want to take preventative measures, and we're going to play a more defensive game now that we're up 1-0. But when you have an offense that's loaded up like Argentina's is, and when you know that Argentina kind of has the officials on their side, or the referees on their side, then you might want to score more than one goal against this Argentina team. I mean, I don't know. That's just my way of thinking. I mean, throughout this entire World Cup, including in the final minutes of the final game, Argentina was just able to kick it up 3 more gears in those final minutes, and that gave them multiple opportunities. But yeah, ultimately Argentina ended up coming out on top over England, which led to England and France playing in the third place game, which actually was the highest scoring third place playoff World Cup game in history, with 10 total points. England scored 6 points against France's 4 points. England just absolutely dominated France in the first half. Declan Rice scored in the 3rd minute. Ezri Konsa scored in the 18th minute. Bukayo Saka scored in the 37th minute and the 46th minute. Jude Bellingham scored in the 98th minute, and Bukayo Saka scored in the 87th minute as well off of a penalty kick. So just an absolutely dominating performance by England. Kylian Mbappe did score 2 goals, though. He scored in the 48th minute and the 66th minute, which gave him the Ballon d'Or, which is essentially the most valuable player throughout the entire World Cup award. The primary, I guess, measurement of that is the amount of goals scored for your team. And this third place match counted for that. People are arguing that it should not count because it was a third place game. Neither team really had any stakes in it besides third place. And these are two teams that were wanting to win the World Cup. So I don't really think that either of these teams really came in with the mentality of, oh, we need to win this game. It just kind of seemed like both were just scoring for funsies, I guess. I mean, I don't really know how else to say it. But yeah, the last time that or at least the previous record for the highest scoring third place World Cup game was back in 1958, which France was also a part of that game as well, and France defeated West Germany 6-3. So, history being set in that third place game with England's victory over France 6-4, except instead of France being on the winning side like they were back in 58, they're on the losing side of the game, which sucks for France, I guess. But you know what? They at least scored more than West Germany scored on them back in 1958. So I guess congrats to France. But moving on now to the final game, which was pretty insane. I mean, if you told me the score was 1-0, I honestly would not have believed you, because throughout the entire game, Spain had complete control the entire time. I mean, they took 20 shots, 11 of them were on goal. They controlled possession for almost 70% of the entire game, completed 803 passes. I mean, there is a reason why people throughout this World Cup were saying that when you play Spain, it's like death by 1,000 passes, because in almost every single game this World Cup, Spain has completed around 1,000 passes per game. I mean, just looking back at the previous games that Spain played, you look back at the game against France, they completed about 500 passes. In the game against Belgium, they completed 295. So, I mean, I guess they did have the extra time that helps them a lot. But 522 passes from Spain against Portugal. Also in the knockout round, look at the game against Austria, 611 passes. So Spain, again, people say death by 1,000 passes. It is a figure of speech, but in some games, it is almost a reality. I mean, I don't really know how else to explain it, but Spain just absolutely was dominating the possession with all their passes throughout the entire World Cup. They were forcing Argentina to spread out. That allowed Spain to get down the field very quickly to take those 20 shots on goal. Spain ended up with 9 corner kicks. That is also pretty unprecedented as well. And the passes that they completed, 90% accuracy. 90% accuracy. I mean, this Spanish team was on something this game. But something else that happened this game, Enzo Fernandez from Argentina in the 93rd minute got a red card essentially for flipping one of the Spanish players. And I don't mean like flipping them off like with the middle finger. I mean literally flipping the dude. They were both going for the ball, and Spanish player was able to get it off, and then Fernandez just takes his foot, puts it right under the Spaniard's leg, and just follows through, like holds his foot down, and the Spaniard just goes flipping through the air. It was absolutely insane. And originally, it was going to just be a yellow card, but Fernandez got a yellow earlier in the game, and so that would have been his second yellow with the flipping. So Fernandez ends up leaving the game. But ironically, that's when Argentina actually started to play better, when they had less guys on the field. Sometimes it works out better that way. Sometimes it doesn't. I think Argentina definitely should have just, kicked it in sooner. They should have been playing better sooner. But this isn't the first game where they've had antics like this. I mean, you look back at the Argentina versus England game that I was telling you about before. And Argentina, or at least not even Argentina, but Messi, him and Jude Bellingham were going for a ball at one point in the game. And I thought that maybe Argentina got in contact with TKO or Triple H or someone from WWE, because there were some WWE like moves that I was seeing out there. I mean, Messi almost RKO'd Jude Bellingham for trying to go for a ball. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess they are in America, so and that's where TKO and Triple H are. So maybe they were just available. Maybe they wanted to give some advice on how to do things in America. I don't know. I mean, I really don't know where what brought the RKO on, but yeah, Messi tried to RKO Jude Bellingham, and there was no card, no nothing. And I mean, as expected, I mean, we talked about how Flo got punished and had a red card for about 4 days or so because he accidentally stepped on a guy's foot, and Messi intentionally steps on a guy's Achilles heel and doesn't get punished whatsoever. So, I mean, that's not really anything new for anybody there, but yeah, I mean, I do think, this is Spain's second time ever winning the World Cup. And just kind of looking back at history, it's kind of interesting how those games almost played out the exact same way. So Spain, when they last won the World Cup, they last won it in 2010. Do you know when the last time there was a red card in a World Cup final game? It was in 2010 when Spain was going up against the Netherlands. Dutch defender John Heitinga got a red card during the final against Spain towards the end of the game. He received a second yellow in the 109th minute of extra time, which left the Dutch with 10 men before Spain ultimately won the match with a goal. Fernandez. Sorry, there's a lot of Dez's on the Argentina roster. But Fernandez got his second yellow in the 93rd minute, which wasn't in extra time, but it was right at the cusp of extra time because there was 4 minutes of stoppage. So Fernandez technically got his red card in stoppage time. But again, this is the first time that there's been a red card in the World Cup final since 2011, which was when Spain played last. So there's another parallel just right there. The outcome of the game also was 1-0. I mean, it's just kind of crazy how that all completely played out. I mean, I think Spain probably wasn't as dominant against the Netherlands in terms of time of possession like they were against Argentina in this game, but Spain was ultimately able to win their second World Cup pretty much the same way that they won the first World Cup, which, again, absolutely crazy. You don't really see that too often where history kind of repeats itself like that. So congrats to Spain. I know a few fans of Spain, like the national team, so I'm sure they are thrilled about the outcome of this game. And I will say I do know for a fact that a lot of people that are not Argentinian are also very thrilled about the outcome of this game because people were really, really upset with some of the antics that Argentina was doing that I'd mentioned previously online. I mean, there was outrage from people online about Argentina and the fact that they got the whistle. I mean, it's almost like they were essentially Oklahoma City, if you think about it. Like, people were, like, you go back to the NBA playoffs this year, throughout the entire NBA playoffs, and not even NBA playoffs, but just NBA season as a whole, and people were complaining about Oklahoma City getting the whistle all the time. That's literally Argentina in a nutshell. This World Cup, they've gotten the whistle so many times, and they probably should not have gotten the whistle. So, yeah, that's pretty much that. I guess another parallel for the Spain-Argentina game and the Spain-Netherlands game is that Torres scored his goal in the 106th minute, right in the opening of the second half of extra time. And Spain also won against the Netherlands, scoring in the second half of extra time. So, yeah, again, just lots of parallels in this final game of the World Cup, which sometimes can be quite intriguing, to say the least. But yeah, congratulations to Spain. They're one of 3 teams to win the Euros and go on to win the World Cup after winning the Euros. Not a lot of teams have done it. I think the last team to do it actually was Spain in 2011. So or 2010, excuse me. So what are the odds, right? I mean, come on. I guess it was Spain's time. Guess it was just their time. But yeah, lots of history breaking things that happened this World Cup. I will say after the game, not entirely thrilled with some of the ceremony behavior. Argentina was not looking, they wouldn't even look at Spain when they were celebrating. And I mean, I guess, part of me kind of gets it because, if you think about it, like, would you want to watch the team that you just played go and hoist the trophy that you thought you were going to be hoisting? No, not necessarily. But in the name of sportsmanship, you kind of have to. That's just the way it goes. You have to be there to witness it, just out of sportsmanship. Also, at the end of the game, Spain storms the field and Argentina storms out there to fight them. And yeah, again, just really, really poor sportsmanship from the Argentinian team. Not necessarily the fans, but the Argentinian team going out and fighting the opposing team after they beat you. It's just pathetic. And I mean, I've talked about it on previous broadcasts. I've talked about it on previous shows before the show was on radio, when it was just a podcast. And I mean, one of the instances that, immediately comes to mind is Michigan versus Ohio State, where Michigan beat Ohio State at Ohio State. It wouldn't have been last season. It would have been the season before. So back in 2024. So yeah, this would not have been this, or at least, this story would not have been on radio. It would have been on the podcast when it was a show. But I mean, as you guys probably remember anyways, what ended up happening was Michigan plants their flag in the middle of the O, the middle of the Ohio State O at the center of the field, and the Ohio State players erupt. They fly off the bench and they go and confront Michigan. And one of the things that I said on that show, or on the episode, was if you have enough fight to go and fight the opposing team celebrating, then you did not put in enough in the game. And I'm going to stand on that when it comes to Argentina going out and attacking Spain for celebrating in the middle of the field. Like if you have enough fight to go and do that, then you did not put in enough effort in the game. You did not play your best game. And, sometimes you don't play your best game, but that doesn't mean you take it out on the other team after the game concludes. Plain and simple. I mean, it's just really, really poor behavior by the Argentinian team. And, there's not really a lot that Spain could do about it there. There just simply was not. Besides, I guess, fight back or defend themselves. But I mean, it ended up getting somewhat resolved. But yeah, so I guess this definitely was not a great World Cup for Messi. I mean, obviously, this is the third World Cup final that he's been a part of. He went to I believe it was 2014 when Germany won, and Argentina and Messi lost there. Then he makes it to the World Cup final against France in Qatar, wins that one, and then makes it to this one and loses it to Spain. So, I mean, not a lot of people can say that they've been to 3 World Cups or even World Cup final or even a singular World Cup final. So, I mean, people have already deemed Messi the greatest of all time simply because he won a World Cup. I mean, that was one of the things that people were looking for to separate Ronaldo and Messi, because to a lot of people, those are the 2 greatest players of all time. Statistically, relatively similar. In some statistics and awards, Ronaldo was more dominant. In some statistics and awards, Messi was more dominant. But the only thing that neither of them had prior to 2022 was a World Cup title. And Messi was the first one to get there. And since Ronaldo is supposedly, I believe he's retiring after this World Cup, at least for Portugal. He will not have a World Cup under his belt. I don't think Portugal has made a World Cup final since Ronaldo has been on the roster either. So that's also something to keep in mind, at least in the GOAT debate. But I don't know how long either of them are going to be the GOATs, simply because Mbappe already is on track to have the most goals scored all time on the international stage, already passing up Messi. Erling Haaland is also starting to get up there as well. He doesn't have as many goals all time, but in every single World Cup game, except the one against England, he scored at least 1 goal. And it was, again, his first World Cup. We're likely going to see Erling Haaland in the next 3 or 4, I would imagine. I mean, that's kind of a bold prediction maybe, but he's kind of putting Norway on the map. That's essentially what Ronaldo did for Portugal. If you think about it, before Ronaldo, Portugal did not even have Euro titles or any other titles. They weren't really that relevant in the, I guess, football sphere or soccer sphere, however you want to call it. But either way, Portugal was not a very relevant force in the sport of soccer. And now, thanks to Ronaldo, Portugal is kind of on the map. They've made World Cups consistently. They make it to the knockouts consistently. So hopefully Portugal can keep that momentum going without Ronaldo. But as of right now, nobody really knows what the future is going to be for Portugal soccer or Portugal football. So, yeah, I mean, I guess that's pretty much where I'm at on that. Just kind of looking ahead of, I guess, post-World Cup. I guess to close out the story, there is one interesting little thing about the next World Cup. So it's actually kind of intriguing because this World Cup, it was the first time that more than one country hosted, or 3 countries hosted the World Cup. It was United States, Mexico, and Canada. In 2030, there's actually going to be 6 host countries that are going to be hosting out of 3 different continents: Africa, Europe, and South America. And the reason why they're putting it on this way is because they're celebrating the 100th anniversary of the World Cup. The World Cup started and the first ever World Cup was hosted in Uruguay back in 1930. So the way that they have this divided up is that Morocco, Portugal, and Spain are the primary hosts. The centenary match hosts are Argentina, Paraguay, and Uruguay. And the reason why that these are the hosts is because they were some of the few teams that participated. Argentina hosted it in their stadium. The final championship game was in their stadium. Uruguay was the first ever champion of the World Cup. So I think I might have said this in 3 broadcasts ago, when it might have been 4, when the World Cup first started, talking about how crazy. Oh no, it would have been like 3 broadcasts ago, when Uruguay got booted out of knockout play. And I was talking about how they're kind of a legacy soccer program. And the reason why they're a legacy soccer program is because they won the first ever World Cup. And the reason why Paraguay is also one of the match hosts is because that's where the headquarters is for the soccer federation or like the SCONMEBOL, I think is what it's called. I don't remember the abbreviation for the countries of South America that play football, like the football federations for South America. Paraguay is where their headquarters is located. So that's why those 3 are the host countries for the centenary match hosts. Primary hosts, Morocco, Portugal, and Spain. And that is going to be interesting because since that's going to be in 2030, in 2034, if I'm not mistaken, it's going to come back to either North America or it's going to go, well, no, I think it's going to Australia, actually. I believe it's going to Australia in 2034. So the dynamic of the World Cup is quite interesting because there's a lot of different rules for host countries. Like you can only host in certain continents after a certain period of time. And since Africa, Europe, and South America are all going to be hosting it in 2030, it's going to bring up some complications in, I think, 2038 and 2042. So that'll be something to keep an eye out on in the future. But yeah, with that being said, let's take a quick little break before we kind of move on into the college sports realm of things with college football and the Protect College Sports Act, after hearing a message from our sponsor. This broadcast is brought to you by Authentic Impact, a Northwest Indiana executive coaching practice working with family businesses to ensure their legacy. When you started your business, you made a promise to do things differently, better than anyone else. Over time, as the business grows, that promise can get diluted or even lost. Penny Schlyde at Authentic Impact helps family business owners reignite that promise, weaving it into team engagement, performance, and hiring so your passion becomes the heartbeat of your company again. Learn more at authentic-impact-coaching.com. Okay, so college football. Indiana secured the highest rated recruit that the IU football program has ever recorded in its history. Number 1 wide receiver, Monshun Sales, commits to IU on Pat McAfee's show. He's the first ever 5-star recruit that has gone to Indiana. Obviously the highest wide receiver recruit, since he is the highest recruit, but he chose Indiana over Texas, Alabama, Ohio State, and LSU Friday afternoon, which, again, is absolutely insane when you think about it. I mean, it's insane. Just thinking about the beginning of the Signetti era where Indiana football was nothing. I mean, it was the losingest program in the entirety of college football. And IU was essentially the joke of Division I college football. And ever since Signetti joined in, takes Indiana to 12-team playoff for the first time, or just a playoff in the first time in its history. Gets a double-digit win season for Indiana for the first time in school history. Then follows that up with picking up amazing players from the transfer portal, turns one of them into a Heisman, and turns them into the first ever 16-0 national champs since I believe it was 1929. Like one of the first years of college football. And that team was Yale, back when Yale was good at football, which apparently was almost 100 years ago. Anyways, it's been a long road. It's been a fun 2 years, a long road to get to this point of a number one overall recruit. I don't expect the trajectory to change. I mean, you look at it, it's been consistent. Signetti gets there, he brings his guys from JMU, and shows that he basically proves himself as a coach that he can take people from the mid-major level, which JMU I kind of consider JMU a mid-major. I mean, they're not in the Power 4 conference, or they're not in a Power 4 conference. They were formerly, what was it? Like not major, but they were like minor Division I. Like they just were not in. They weren't in the Mountain West. They were playing football with like South Dakota State, North Dakota, like essentially the low major schools. They were winning at that level. Then Signetti in the Mountain West takes them, gets their first, by technicality, their first Mountain West title. They weren't able to actually have it, I think, the first year that they were in because, there's a lot of technicalities that were going on when JMU first made its way to the, not Mountain West. I said Mountain West like 4 times. I mean Sun Belt. The Sun Belt Conference. Obviously not in the Mountain West. What am I saying? But anyways, the point is, he took guys from JMU, a smaller school, to a major university like Indiana, and showed that they can get a 10-win season. They can go compete in a playoffs. I mean, it wasn't a great game necessarily. I mean, I think it was 21-10 at Notre Dame's stadium. But then gets more guys out of the transfer portal. Fernando Mendoza and a bunch of other guys recruits a lot of decent players. I think that was the first time when Indiana had a decent amount of 3 stars on their roster, and I think there might have been a couple 4 stars as well. Just slowly building up the recruiting process. Now, I think the one thing that people kind of have on Signetti right now is that they're saying that he can't develop a quarterback on his own, that he thrives on transfer quarterbacks. But with the way things are going, the way the trajectory is going, I would not be surprised if at some point with either next year or the following year that's going to change. And then there's going to be nothing that critics can say to diminish the accomplishments that Signetti has had at Indiana. And I think, just looking at ESPN's preseason rankings, I think it's almost insane just looking at them. You have Ohio State at number 1 at the beginning But, at preseason, I don't know why Ohio State always seems to just get the nod because they're Ohio State. I mean, yeah, I get it. They were national champions 2 years ago now. They still have Julian Sayin. They still have Jeremiah Smith. I get that. I get that a lot. But, going into preseason, it just doesn't entirely make too much sense to me. I mean, you even look at last season where they essentially held on to the number one spot up until the Big Ten, up until the conclusion of the Big Ten championship when IU beat them. And they just held on to that number one spot after Texas lost because Texas got it for, frankly, because of Arch Manning. And that's pretty much it, because they were like, oh, Arch Manning. And that was that. Then Ohio State beat them. They're like, well, Ohio State won the national championship the year before. We're just going to keep him at number one. And they just kept him at number one the rest of the year. And it was so frustrating because that was last year. But now they're just giving it to Ohio State because of the players that they have coming back. And it's like, well, you could argue the same thing for Notre Dame. You could argue the same thing for Texas. You could argue the same thing for Ole Miss. I mean, Ole Miss literally has Trinidad Chambers coming back, as well as Kewan Lacey, who are two of their biggest stars of the year. Marcel Reed's coming back for Texas A&M. They're only ninth. So, I mean, I don't know. I feel like Ohio State there's a lot of bias there, and I don't know. It annoys me. I would argue that Oregon should be above Ohio State at this point because Oregon had a much bigger pull in the transfer portal. They beefed up their defense. They have a solid backup quarterback in Dylan Raiola. They still have Dante Moore there. They, to me, would be the obvious number one pick, at least if you're not going off of last season. Georgia at 3, I really just don't understand it. They didn't have a wide receiver core. They still don't have really that great of a wide receiver core. Zachariah Branch did most of the work, and Georgia has not had a good wide receiver core since 2023. So I don't get that. Notre Dame at 4, I find that completely. I don't really like that at all. I think Notre Dame, Oregon, and IU should be in the top 3, and that's that. That's pretty much it. They have Indiana at 6, which I can kind of understand at least not having them at number 1, just because this, skepticism of, is Josh Hoover going to still be a turnover machine, or is he going to develop? What is IU's wide receiver core going to look like with Charlie Becker at the number 1 spot? The drama with Nick Marsh. There's a lot of uncertainty there, but there's uncertainty with the teams above Indiana as well. And it's like, well, they just came off a national championship and you're keeping them out of the top 5. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Miami as well. I feel like Miami's kind of getting the shaft here as well. They picked up a elite quarterback in the transfer portal. I mean, I do get that they aren't going to have Ruben Bain Jr. and Akeem Mesidor. Huge, huge loss for Miami. But I feel like that, with Cristobal getting to a national championship with Miami, I think in his 3rd year there, I'm pretty sure it's his 3rd year there. But getting there in that decent amount of time, I think there's got to be a little bit more respect there. But yeah, Ole Miss at 8, I think that's probably the most reasonable out of these rankings. But again, Ole Miss, they do have that returning talent. They still have Pete Golding coming back, but we haven't seen Pete Golding. We haven't seen regular season Pete Golding. We've seen postseason Pete Golding where, he can beat Georgia, which is something that Lane Kiffin struggles to do. He can go toe-to-toe with an elite Miami team, and he has a lot of returning talent coming back this year. But we haven't seen Pete Golding coach in the regular season as a head coach. So I can understand the skepticism there for that. A&M at 9, that's kind of understandable, the way that they lost to Miami. You definitely can't have them above Miami going into next year. That'd be crazy. LSU at 10, Now, this one I think is a bit ridiculous because Lane Kiffin normally takes like 2 steps backwards when he goes to another team after leaving his previous one. So I don't think LSU is going to make it to the playoffs for that reason. He has all the pieces around him to do it. He has Sam Levitt. LSU is known for developing elite wide receivers. He's got Ed Orgeron, who he's worked with before, who coached LSU to a national championship in 2019. Like, everything is there for Lane Kiffin, but I think because it's Lane Kiffin, I think he's going to mess it up in his first year. That's pretty much my logic there, but you look back in time and it shows. Like, the logic is there. You just gotta look backwards. Texas Tech at 11. That, I think Texas Tech probably shouldn't even be in the top 15. And if that, they should be like 16th. Because I think Brendan Sorsby was a huge part of that roster. They lost, kind of like Miami, they lost 2 key defensive players on the line. And I just don't know how Texas Tech is going to make up for the loss of Brandon Sorsby. So, yeah, we'll see how it goes. I think BYU is getting a little bit of disrespect here, being at 12. I think they should at the very least be above Texas Tech, maybe even above LSU. I'd honestly put BYU in my top 10. Oklahoma, I could see them possibly creating some magic, maybe with John Mateer. I mean, from what I saw in preseason stuff, he looks bigger, like muscular-wise. Like, I think he'll probably do better, but we'll see. Michigan, I think, is another team that is severely underrated. Penn State, I don't really know what to do with them. They're at 15. Alabama's at 16. I'm not even sure if that's low enough, to be honest. I don't really have a lot of confidence in Alabama going into next year. And that might just be because of the recruiting rankings for the class of 2027, but I think normally that kind of reflects what the current roster is a little bit, because players do like to go and follow other talented players. I mean, some players will try to just go and get on a starting roster. Some players will try and follow talent and learn from other older players that are higher in talent level and develop that way. So, I don't know. We'll see. I think Alabama's they're kind of a wild card, but I'm kind of on the lower end with them. Washington could be interesting with Desmond Williams coming back. Obviously, we talked about the drama with Desmond Williams in Washington previously. 90% sure LSU was trying to poach him, but Washington, they were like, nope, you signed a contract, you are staying here, mister. And yeah, so he ended up staying. Then Utah, I have no clue what to even think of Utah with their coaching change, with Morgan Scally taking the reins. Iowa, I think Iowa could be very interesting. Iowa normally does not have great quarterbacks. I think last year was probably the best showing that they've had from a quarterback. But yeah, it's going to be a battle between Hank Brown and German Hecklinski. Don't really know who either of those guys are, which I'm not sure if that's a good sign for Iowa or a bad sign. Maybe they can come in as kind of an underdog. USC is at 20. Now, I'm kind of shocked about that just because there was a lot of hype for USC this offseason. But yeah, USC at 20. And that was a team, honestly, I probably would put a little bit higher. I probably would have put them at 18 or 17, to be completely honest. Louisville at 21. Curious to see what Louisville does with Lincoln Kienholz. Louisville kind of came out of nowhere last year, so I'm really intrigued to see what happens with this Louisville team. But yeah, then you've got SMU at 22. You've got TCU at 23, Houston at 24, and Tennessee at 25. So you can kind of tell that there's hierarchies with conferences that are kind of starting to form a little bit. You can see like the top end of the Big Ten, or the top end of the Big Ten in the top 10, like top 6. You've got Indiana, Oregon, and Ohio State. That's not really a surprise. Then you've got Notre Dame there at number 4. Since Marcus Freeman has taken over there, they've been a really great program consistently. So I think them being in the top 5 makes complete and total sense. Georgia in the top 5. They're kind of like the Ohio State of the SEC. They just get the nod because nobody in the SEC can really beat them, but they struggle against out of conference competition that's at the Power 4 level. So I think Georgia at 3, severely overrated, but then you've got Texas and Ole Miss and A&M and LSU all kind of rounding out the top 10 there. So it's clear that, out of the top 10 teams, it seems like essentially, at least from what I'm getting from ESPN's top 10, is that, like, at least like in tiers, you've got top 2 Big Ten teams, then you've got Georgia and Notre Dame, then you've got Texas and Indiana, then you've got, and Miami, then you've got Ole Miss, A&M, LSU to round out the top 10. Like, there's like 4 different tiers within the top 10. And that doesn't really surprise me all that much because each roster is built differently. Like, each of them have very different strengths. Like, I feel like Ohio State, strength-wise, I think Julian Sayin at quarterback out of the top 10 teams might be the best. I would argue Ole Miss with Trinidad Chambliss and K'Wan Lacey could contest Ohio State a little bit for that quarterback wide receiver connection, but there's others that can also make the argument as well. You look at the offensive and defensive lines, like Oregon on defense looks really, really strong. The pickup of Coy Parrish from Minnesota, I think, is going to be a huge difference for Oregon this year, and I think Oregon will probably make it back to the Big Ten championship next year after not making it last year. Or, this year, after not making it last year. You look at some of the other teams down lower, like Penn State, for example. Penn State didn't really do all that well last year. They lose Ben. I almost said Ben Franklin again. If you've been here on previous broadcasts, oh my God. If you've been here on previous broadcasts, I always call the Penn State's coach, or the now Virginia Tech's head coach, Ben Franklin, even though it is not Ben Franklin. I can't stop laughing. Oh my God. But yeah. No, the amount of time I've called him Ben Franklin so many times that I'm I'm forgetting his first name. That's how many times I've called him Ben Franklin, just for added context. I'm going to see it and I'm going to just lose my mind. Oh my God. Oh man. Man, why can I not remember? I literally just think it's Ben Franklin. It's Ben Franklin, but it's not. Okay. I'm losing focus. So, let me see. It's going to be James. It's James Franklin. I keep wanting to call him Ben Franklin because he goes to Penn State, and that's where, Ben Franklin is from Pennsylvania as well. So I don't know. My mind just conflates the two. It's terrible. It's terrible, I know. But yeah, that's pretty much how I'm looking at the top 25 as of right now. But yeah. So I guess a quick little comment about Pat Narduzzi's claims that the ACC is better than the Big Ten. I'm not even sure ACC is better than the SEC. If he said that, I could like I feel like there's more of an argument for that than there is for the ACC being better than the Big Ten. But I think part of the reason why he's saying that is just to kind of draw attention to himself a little bit. I don't really think it's anything to be taken seriously. He's trying to compare bowl game resumes, but I mean, even just looking at some of the comments on X or Twitter, people are saying like you couldn't handle ECU in a bowl game when they were missing half the team. That's like East Coastal Carolina. Lost ECU in a bowl game and West Virginia's worst team in 10 years last season, by the way. ACC was 1-6 versus the Big 12 last year, let alone being better than the Big 10. So essentially, in that last tweet, what's being alluded to is that the Big 12 is not as good as the Big 10. And the ACC did not do good against the Big 12. So therefore, really thought you did good against the Big 10. And to be fair, the ACC did have a better bowl record than the SEC. However, the bowl records are kind of inflated a little bit simply because of Miami. Because Miami won 3 games to get to the national championship. That's 3 bowl games for the ACC. And Miami, yes, they did beat a Big Ten team. They beat 2 SEC teams. But that inflates the amount of losses that the SEC has in bowl games. If you think about it that way, it also inflates the wins that the ACC has. So I think with this expanded playoff, the bowl game records, like trying to compare bowl game records is irrelevant now. I mean, back when it was the 14 playoff, there's a little bit more of an argument there. Like if you made it out of the first round, then you were in the championship, and that was only 2 games, and that wouldn't really inflate too much. But if you're winning 4 games, like Indiana won 4 games in the playoffs, like you have to win 4 games to win the national title. Hold on. Yeah, I mean, you have to at least win 4 games to win a national title, and those games in the playoff are counted as bowl games. So I don't think that, claiming that you look at, like, his exact quote was, you look at our record in bowl games against the SEC and the Big Ten. You look at our record in the regular season. We don't have losing records. And again, the bowl game records are inflated. They are inflated. So take it with a grain of salt. That's pretty much all I have to say about that. But yeah, for the final story, we're going to talk a little bit about the proposed changes to Protect College Sports Act that would allow conference expansion, but with a catch. So essentially, the Protect College Sports Act would cap the number of teams in the Power 4 conferences at 19 or 20. I wouldn't be surprised if they tried to do it at 20, just because you look at the ACC's new conference schedule. I think they're doing a 9-game conference schedule this year, but the ACC has 17 teams. So there's going to be one team that gets kind of put to the side, I guess, in a sense. I don't really know how else to say it. Like, they're just going to have 8 conference games. They're not going to have 9 like the others. So I don't know. That, I think 19 would just be a dumb number. I'm sorry, it would not work if you had 19 teams. If you're going to switch the conference number, should either be 20, just make it big, or make it small, or go down to 12. I would not be opposed to 12 teams in a conference. Now that would completely jack up broadcasting stuff, just because of the way things are split up. With 4 conferences, it's nice and evenly split up between Fox, CBS, ABC, and ESPN. But with more than 4, it can get a little bit complicated. But, and I guess Notre Dame is an independent with NBC. So I guess it's split 5 ways pretty nicely. But yeah, Big Ten and SEC have objected to the portion of the bill that would effectively freeze Power 4 membership, and the initial language in the bill would have prevented a merger between the two conferences to form a super league. So again, kind of like I said at the beginning of the broadcast prelude the story or previewing the story, there were rumors and whatnot floating around about the Big Ten and SEC trying to form a super league. But yeah. And the updated language would bar any conference reporting $700 million or more in revenue from merging with, acquiring, or absorbing another conference or its membership. And Greg Sankey said, when I first read it out, it's like, why is that even in there? There are interests that have introduced those issues. We have 3 or 4 changes there. If Title II remains, that are critically important to us. And I will say Greg Sankey is somebody who was against the merging of the two conferences. Some of the SEC coaches have voiced their opinion on merging with the Big Ten and, voicing their interest in it. And Sankey is one of the voices of reason where it's like, yeah, I don't think that's a good idea. And so him saying that he doesn't understand what's in there is a little ironic to me, just because, it kind of quashes that issue just head on. But the new proposal would allow conferences to expand, but any Power 4 program seeking to switch conferences would first have to spend at least 5 years as an independent, which I think is interesting. I think that's a very interesting twist. And the reason why I say that is because one of the things that people have brought up, at least when it comes to players transferring, is if you do transfer to another school, then you would sit out for a season. Like, you just wouldn't play. You'd be able to practice, but you would not be able to be on the starting roster. That was something that was proposed previously. 2 exceptions to the power conference, waiting rule, like the waiting period, would be Notre Dame and UConn. They could join a Power 4 conference immediately since they are already independent. Under the current bill's language, Notre Dame would have been blocked from joining a Power conference. So they're still working out the bill. It's making its way in the Senate and the House. It's doing its thing. But the proposed changes are directly tied to the broader fight over the bill itself. The SEC and Big Ten have refused to back the legislation in its current form and are pushing for revisions before it reaches the floor. They're ongoing with some hope of reaching a deal this week. So if it is reached this week, that will be something quite interesting. I don't know in what form it's going to be reached. Obviously, I'm not on the Senate floor. I have no connections to the Senate floor or the House floor. I only know what's going on based on what I am seeing online. So, try my best here. But I will say, based on, what I am seeing, obviously the Big Ten and the SEC they're going to back and not back things based on their interests and their interests alone. I don't think they necessarily care about the state of the NCAA. I think they more or less care about, the state of their conferences. How can their conferences make more money? How can they exploit the other conferences, essentially? And that shouldn't really surprise anybody. I mean, why do you think that the Big Ten acquired USC, Washington, UCLA, and Oregon? It wasn't for funsies. It was for money. Like, come on. But anyway, that's all that we got time for today. Next week, I'm not even sure what we're really going to be talking about, because it's going to be kind of a dead week. Or not even dead week, but a dead few weeks, because this is a part of the year where there's not really a lot going on. The World Cup kind of saved us from that a little bit, but now the World Cup's over. So I guess I'll give you guys an update on the Save College Sports Act next week, since they did say that there's probably going to be a proposal by the end of this week. So yeah, I'll give you guys an update on that. And any other kind of news updates regarding the rules and regulations, college football, or any other college sports that are going to be coming up this fall. And with that being said, I'll see you guys all next week. Schlyde out.